Hey everybody, welcome to the channel, True Crime Stories. If you're new to the channel, please hit that like button and subscribe so you can hear more. Thanks for stopping by. So the last few videos that I have done have had a kind of a theme about young kids, young teenagers, and young women mostly going missing from county fires or state fires. And today I want to talk about a story. I'm just going to read from this. This is from Unsolved. Each year, the Coos County Fire rolls into Myrtle Point, Oregon. For many, it's a weekend-long celebration. 14-year-old Jeremy Bright and his close friend Johnny, it was the highlight of the year for them. Now, Jeremy lived 100 miles away in Grants Pass where his mother worked. But during that week of the fire, he and his sister stayed with their stepfather in Myrtle Point. Now, on Thursday, Jeremy and his friend Johnny enjoyed the fire. They went to the festivities at the fire, and around 4:45 that afternoon, Jeremy made a long-distance phone call to his mother, Diane. Now, just like the girls in the previous video that I talked about calling their moms while they were at the fire, letting their moms know everything was okay, Jeremy did the same thing. He told his mother that he was having a great time. She told him she'd be back in a couple of days, back to town, and that he was going to stay with his stepfather until then. Now, 5 hours later at 9:40 p.m., Jeremy showed up at a local tavern owned by his grandmother. There, he met his stepfather and asked to borrow some money. It was the last time Jeremy was ever seen by his family. 2 days later, Diane arrived in Myrtle Point as planned. She went to pick Jeremy up at his stepfather's house, but her son never showed up. His mom says she went inside and she found his keys on top of the TV, and his wallet and his new watch that he had bought. I knew when I found those things that he was around somewhere because he wouldn't leave without them. On Saturday night, Diane was worried enough to contact the police. At first, of course, the sheriff's department believed that he had run away. His mother says after the police said that they thought he had run away, she said, I sat down and I thought of every possibility in every way that I could think of that he may have done that. Had he run off with some of these people from this fire? Did he have a family member or someone that he was staying with, hiding out with? Had he gotten into some kind of trouble? So she starts going over everything she can possibly think of to try to think what would lead him to run away, and if he had run away, who with? So on Sunday, August 17th, 1986, the fire closed down. Everyone in Myrtle Point was talking about Jeremy's disappearance, and all these conflicting stories began to emerge. According to one rumor, Jeremy attended one of Myrtle Point's parties and drank some beer, and someone had laced this beer with a drug. And in another story, the other story claimed that 3 older teenagers showed up at a swimming hole where Jeremy was with some friends and began to harass these younger boys. And this information supposedly came from a jailhouse informant. According to one story, Jeremy was supposedly shot by an older teenager. And the rumor went that they took him to this cabin that was about 10 miles away, and they tried to nurse him back to health, but he ended up dying. And they said that they threw his body in a shallow grave about 200 feet from this cabin. Now, the police went out and they searched that whole area. They searched all around that cabin. They could find no traces of Jeremy. There was no blood or anything inside the cabin to indicate that someone had been shot and had bled to death there. And there was no shallow graves had been dug. Now, his mother says that was one of the hardest things for her was all these rumors, not knowing who to believe, not knowing where these rumors were coming from. Every time I would hear a new one, I would have a nightmare for a week, she said. The one hope that I had is that he didn't suffer. To describe Jeremy, Jeremy had scars on his forehead and his nose, and he had a mole on his chin. Jeremy was 6 foot tall and 140 pounds. Jeremy was 14 years old at the time that he disappeared. He had brown hair and green eyes. He was last known to have been seen on August 14th, 1986. Did he return home that night? Did he and his stepfather get into some kind of an argument? Did the stepfather tell her something different? Did the sister start to wonder, where's my brother? He hasn't been home. Or who was walking back and forth through this living room with his items laying on top of this TV and nobody was questioning how they got there and he wasn't there? So that is a big red flag. And I don't know if the police talked to this man, if they talked to the sister. I'm going to read a couple more comments here. I was listening to the podcast. I've seen several references over time that the Myrtle Point police did nothing. They say that Jeremy was a runaway. This person says, I was at the fire that week. I lived in that same community, and I was at the fire that week. The day after his disappearance, I had a police officer hand me a flyer. He specifically targeted me because I was Jeremy's age. He said, he was going up to kids, I guess, at the fair and saying, have you seen this boy? He's about your age. He was last seen here at the fair. So the police were doing a little something. They weren't completely just like, okay, we're not going to even look into this. Almost the way that they did Misty Copsey. They didn't go out and talk to anyone for 5 months after her mother reported her missing. So Jeremy would be 53 years old today if he were out there somewhere. They do have an age progression photo of him. And someone's asking the question about his friend Johnny. What did Johnny know? Johnny was with him at the fair. Myrtle Point is about a 2-hour drive from Grants Pass, where Jeremy's mother worked. But the teen had several family members still living in the area. Jeremy and his sister, who was 10 years old at the time, were at the county fair when he was last seen. Now, his mother told the newspapers and told the police and everyone that she had sent the kids to stay with their stepfather for that week because they were out of school for that whole week. And instead of them just sitting around the house while she was at work, she thought it would be better for them to go and they could attend the fair and get out of the house and do something. Now, eventually, police determined that Jeremy was not a runaway, and more agencies joined in the search. Now, there was a report that Jeremy might have last been seen getting into the car of a man named Terry Lee Steinhoff. Now, Steinhoff died in prison in 2007. He was serving a life sentence for the murder of a woman. Police sheriff's officers say they tried several times to talk to this man, but he would never tell them anything. They searched his property and some other sites that were thought to be linked to him, including a pond. But they were never able to find any traces of Jeremy. He was a white male with brown hair and green eyes. He had scars on his forehead, nose, and the left side of his mouth. He reportedly had a heart murmur, and his left index finger was broken at the time of his disappearance. Now, according to this, he was last seen wearing a black windbreaker jacket, a red tank top, blue shorts, and a pair of black size 13 Nike shoes with red laces. His parents and the police have come to the conclusion that Jeremy died. They don't believe he just ran off and is out there living his life somewhere. Now, his stepfather, Orville Gulseth, Gulseth, his sister's name was Stay, S''Te. However, in the fall of 1985, Diane and Orville are separated. Diane, Jeremy, and the sister moved 100 miles away to Grants Pass, Oregon. Jeremy was a popular teenager. He liked sports. He was an honor roll student, and he looked forward to beginning high school that fall. His mom recalls that he always had things to do and places to go. He was a star basketball player. He coached the girls' basketball team of his little sister. He played baseball and football. He was very active and outgoing, and everyone knew him and liked him. She didn't know of any enemies that he had made. Now, his friend's name was Johnny Gray, and they were looking forward to spending the evening at this county fair. Now, it is said that his stepfather had left that evening for his job. Later that morning, Jeremy took his sister and her friend Sarah to the fair. He bought them all-day ride passes, and around 2 o'clock that afternoon, he said goodbye to his sister at the Ferris wheel. The plan was they would meet back there at the Ferris wheel at 5 p.m. Now, that afternoon, a handful of people reported seeing Johnny and Jeremy at the fair. And at some point in the afternoon, keep in mind, Jeremy had called his mother at 4:45 p.m. Told his mom he was having a great time. And at 5 p.m., he was to meet his sister back at the Ferris wheel. Now, here's where this story gets a little bit confusing to me. Later that afternoon, Jeremy went to work at the Colony. This was a restaurant in Myrtle Point owned by his aunt and uncle. At around 4:45 p.m., he placed a phone call to his mother from a payphone outside of McKay's Market. He told her he was having a terrific time at the fair. She told him she would be back on Saturday to pick up him and his sister. Now, for reasons unknown, Jeremy never went back to the Ferris wheel at 5 to pick up his sister as he had told her he would. His sister figured that he had just got busy with his friend and forgot about her. So she went back to her friend Sarah's house and stayed at her house. Now, 5 hours later, at 9:40 p.m., Jeremy went to the Colony to meet his stepfather, who was now back home from work. He asked to borrow some money to use at the fair the next day. His stepdad said he gave him a couple of dollars and he left. This was the last time that his family ever reported seeing him. The next morning, Friday, August the 15th, his stepfather left for work at early in the morning hours. He didn't check to see if Jeremy was at home before he left. So the stepdad goes, after he sees him at this pub, this tavern, gives him a few dollars. He says, I go back home, I go to bed. He says he wakes up in the early morning hours, gets ready to leave to go to work. He didn't check to see if this kid had come home. And I guess he went to work that day and worked through the day, not knowing that Jeremy was not at home. He says when he came back home from work that evening, Jeremy was still not at the house. He didn't think anything of it. He just figured Jeremy had already left to go to the fair, and he'd see him that night. Now, Saturday morning comes around. This is August the 16th. The mom arrives to pick up the kids. She found Jeremy's keys, wallet, and watch on the TV set. She thought he's somewhere here because he wouldn't leave without his wallet or his new watch, the brand new watch that he had just bought. So she starts looking around for him, and he's nowhere to be seen. So she starts calling up his friends, going to their homes, looking around. She and all the family members that are in the town start getting out and looking for him. They go to the carnival. He's nowhere to be seen at the carnival. None of his friends have reported seeing him. So that evening, she contacts the police. She filed a missing persons report. At first, the police told her, oh, he's just out hanging out with his friends, having fun. He doesn't want to come home yet. He's not ready to let the party end, so he stays out with his buddies. He doesn't have his wallet. He doesn't have his watch. Doesn't have his house keys. And then, when all of his friends say, no, he's not been with me, then the cops say, well, he ran away. He was enjoying this fair and this carnival so much that he had to become a part of it. So he up and he runs away. Keep in mind, the fair's still going on. The carnival's still there in town. Did they go search this carnival? If they believe that this boy was so enamored by this carnival life that he wanted to become part of it, did they go down and did they search? Did they ask these people that worked at this carnival, can we search? Can we search the areas where you all stay? It was romantic, they said. It was a romantic idea to run away with the circus. The police told Diane and Orville, the stepfather, that their divorce was causing so much trauma to this boy that he just ran off. He couldn't handle it. The police told them, well, we checked and his grades have dropped. And he's given in to this pressure of what's going on, of him having to move to a new school. The police believed he was hiding out because he didn't want to have to move. He didn't want to have to move back to where his mother lived and attend a new school. So he was so upset and traumatized by this breakup. Now, there's this police officer named Steve Dalton with the Coos County Sheriff's Department. According to him, Jeremy enjoyed the fair so much that he was hiding there. But yet, I asked the question again, if they thought this 14-year-old boy was being hidden by adult carnival workers, did they go into that carnival grounds with a search warrant, or did they need a search warrant to even go in there and ask to look around? Sergeant Dalton explored the runaway theory. He believed that it was possible that Jeremy had left with the fair. However, after talking with Jeremy's friends and family, he changed his mind. He said, I don't believe that he was the type of kid that would just run off like that. According to his mom, he was close with the family, and he was very protective of his younger sister. She says she believed he had returned to the house because of his belongings being there. And for whatever reason, he left his belongings behind when he left. Now, there's two theories here in my mind. Either he got into some kind of altercation with his stepdad, and his stepdad did something to him, made up this whole story about he went to work. Did they check into that? Did they check to see if his stepdad had come to work? And what about the hours between the time the stepdad returned home from work that night at around, let's say, he gets back from this tavern at around 11 p.m. or so, until he gets up to go to work the next morning at like 5. He never saw Jeremy any time during those hours, and yet Jeremy's belongings were at his house. So that's theory number 1. Or he came home, took off his watch, laid his wallet and things on top of the TV, and someone else came into the house. Could it be that someone came to his door that he knew and he stepped outside, leaving his belongings inside the house, thinking, I'm just going to walk outside here for a minute, speak to these guys, and then go back inside? And maybe they talked him into getting in the car with them. Now, on Sunday, the fire folded up and left town. The town returned to normal. In the meantime, Jeremy's family were out putting up missing persons flyers all around the area. His mom, Diane, began to contact organizations to help her get publicity out about her son. The police searched the fairgrounds and the surrounding woods, and all these rumors started coming in about Jeremy. Now, within days, this rumor came around that this big party was taking place. And Jeremy had attended this party, and he was given a beer, and this beer had been laced with some kind of drug. And that he fatally overdosed. And that these partygoers disposed of his body to avoid getting into trouble. Now, Sergeant Dalton did some questioning, asking around, and he found out that there were at least 2 parties that it was rumored that Jeremy had attended. And at both of these parties, supposedly, this overdose theory happened. So according to people in the community, he overdosed at both parties. So police didn't really believe that this rumor was real, and if it was real, it was kind of the rumor that was just making its way around, and people were repeating it without any fact. And then the next story came. Now his mother, they began to talk about this heart murmur. They said if he had even consumed some drugs that could have caused his heart to get out of rhythm, and he could have went into some kind of heart failure and died from that. And the people there didn't know what had happened, so they just kind of freaked out. And then his mom told police that she did know that Jeremy's friends used drugs and that it was possible that he may have as well. Now, a local jail inmate told the police another story. He claimed that there were 3 local thugs that had shown up at this party and began to harass these kids that were out there partying at this swimming hole. According to this inmate, it was said that one of the men pulled out a gun and began shooting, kind of just to scare these kids, and ended up shooting Jeremy. Now, according to the inmate, the 3 men took Jeremy to a small cabin about 10 miles away. They attempted to nurse him back to health, however, he died. They then buried his body in a shallow grave in the woods. Now, we know that the police went out and they searched this cabin area, they searched the woods, they searched all around there. They could find no traces of blood, and they could find no fresh dug grave, and they could find no remains. 2 more strange clues surfaced on Friday, August the 15th. The day after Jeremy's family last saw him, Johnny's sister, Cecilia Fish, had a disturbing encounter. Around midnight, she and her friend left her sister's apartment As they got to the bottom of the staircase, they almost ran into a local man as he stumbled through the entryway. She jumped back, startled because he was covered in blood. She asked him, "What happened to you?" And he laughed and said, "Oh, this happened hours ago." And then he went on up the stairs into one of the apartments. Half an hour later, Johnny arrived at the apartment building and went to visit their other sister. According to her, Johnny seemed to be very upset and terrified. They asked him what was wrong, but he didn't want to talk to them. He told her to stay away from the windows. She thought he was high. She thought he's high, he's crazy, he's on some kind of drugs, or he's drunk. So after Jeremy goes missing, police start asking, and they start telling him this story. Sergeant Dalton wasn't sure if these incidents were just a coincidence or if they were related to Jeremy's disappearance. Now, Jeremy was with Johnny. This guy comes by the girls, covered in blood, runs upstairs. Moments later, Johnny shows up, the friend of Jeremy. He's visibly upset. He's talking like, "Don't go near the windows. Something bad could happen to you." And he runs off. So I think that the possibility of the theory that somebody shot Jeremy accidentally or on purpose could be true. Now here's another one. There were 3 or 4 different young men who were mentioned as in these rumors. One of them was seen covered in blood that night. That was the one that the sister saw. And according to some witnesses, the same man was seen at the Ferris wheel. Now keep in mind, he was to meet his sister at the Ferris wheel and pick her up. The sister later comes out and says, well, she did see Jeremy later that evening with 2 men, but she didn't recognize either of these 2 men. In September of 1988, one of the 3 suspects in Jeremy's disappearance was 24-year-old Terry Lee Steinhoff. Now, he was charged with an unrelated murder. On May 14, 1988, 32-year-old Patricia Lynn Morris was stabbed to death near a bar in Coos Bay, Oregon. She and Terry had met at the bar earlier that night, and according to some witnesses, she had rejected him, and he ended up stabbing her to death. He pleaded no contest to her murder and was given life in prison. Now, according to some people, Terry had once been Jeremy's babysitter. And several witnesses reported that they saw Jeremy getting into Terry's truck that night. Many of the rumors involved Terry. One rumor was that he was at the party where Jeremy allegedly overdosed. And this jailhouse informant that told that Jeremy had been shot said that it was Terry who was the one that shot Jeremy. So this Terry Steinhoff's name comes up in every possible theory. The police tried to interview him about Jeremy's case, but he refused to cooperate. Now, according to the prison, he died in October of 2007 from a heroin overdose while he was in prison. According to Jeremy's sister, Terry's father was questioned, and he told police he would not rat out his son. He was sick. They said that this Terry's dad was sick. He was dying. Police thought if he knows anything, maybe he'll tell us before he dies. but he said he wouldn't rat out his son. Now, another suspect was Terry's cousin, Dennis Steinhoff. Now, this was the young man who was seen covered in blood the day after Jeremy disappeared. 10 days later, on August the 24th, 1986, he was arrested and charged with possessing a firearm and first-degree burglary at a home near the fairgrounds. So is it possible that these two men, this Terry and this Dennis Steinhoff, that could be the two men that the sister reported seeing Jeremy with at the fair that she didn't know? Is it possible that he went with them? Maybe they said they'd give him a ride. Maybe they asked him for some help. Maybe they just said, come with us, or I don't know. And maybe he willingly got in the truck with him, not knowing what was up. And maybe they went and robbed somebody, and maybe they were afraid that he would talk, and they ended up killing him. Now, this Dennis David Steinhoff, was arrested. He was charged with possessing a firearm and first-degree burglary. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. In 1993, he was convicted of sexually abusing a young girl. Now, the police and Jeremy's family believed he died around the time that he disappeared. They don't believe that he ran off. They don't believe that he lingered for weeks and weeks. They believe that whatever happened to him happened that night and that he died. Probably because both these men were seen with blood on them. Both these men were rumored to have been with Jeremy. Both of them were rumored to have guns. One of them was arrested for robbery that same night. I don't know that Jeremy was involved in the robbery, but I believe that he knew something. And I believe that these men killed him to shut him up, to keep him from telling anything. Now, here's another theory. The police believe, based on some rumors and information that his sister has gathered through the years, she believes that this Terry and David Steinhoff and a man named Hoyt Richardson and another man took Jeremy and Johnny and a couple of their friends into the woods and victimized them. I don't know what she means by that. Was this some type of sexual abuse? Keep in mind, this Dennis Steinhoff was later arrested for sexually abusing a young girl. Is this what she says happened? These older men, they take them out into the woods, and something goes wrong, and Jeremy ends up getting shot. And what happened to all the other ones that was there? Nobody talked? Were they all that afraid? Now, according to the sister, some rumors and information that she was told was that this fourth man, who's never named here, people said that he came home that night with bloody clothes, and he later asked someone to hide a gun for him. People say that Johnny was never the same after Jeremy disappeared. They said that he suffered from nightmares and became addicted to drugs and alcohol, and he became homeless and had suffered from mental problems. He reportedly told someone that if they wanted to find Jeremy, they should go to Roseburg, Oregon. Now, Johnny died in January 2011. Jeremy has never been found. His mother and the police believe that his remains are somewhere near where this fire was taking place. Sadly, many of Jeremy's family and friends have died. His stepfather died in 2003. And so that was Jeremy's story. It's talking about all these girls who had gone missing from these county fires. Well, Jeremy's name came up that he had also gone missing from a county fire, even though his story was a little different than theirs, but I wanted to include it. Thanks for watching.